I listened to my friends and slept with 3 strangers on my graduation trip. But my fiancé found out and left me. I was humiliated by my parents, abandoned by friends, and ended up pregnant without knowing who the father is. My name is Paulina, I'm 23, and to be honest, I've never had much luck in relationships. Since around 16, I've had several boyfriends, 6 to be exact, before I met Victor. Of those 6, none were really worth it. There was everything. The typical guy who just wanted to have fun and disappeared after a few weeks, the one who manipulated me by telling me I was hard to love so I would accept his whims, and the one who brazenly cheated on me with one of my own acquaintances. Sometimes I think each relationship left an invisible scar, something that made me feel increasingly insecure, more broken, and more distrustful of myself. I reached a point where I didn't expect much from men anymore. My friends used to tell me that maybe I just had bad luck, that maybe I chose poorly, but I felt like the problem was me, that maybe I was destined to never find someone who would truly treat me with respect and affection. And then he appeared, Victor. I met Victor through a university classmate. It was at a small gathering. It wasn't a big party or anything like that, more like a meeting among acquaintances. I didn't really feel like going, but I ended up accepting because I needed to distract myself a bit. There he was, chatting calmly, not trying to impress anyone. I remember what caught my attention initially was his way of listening. I don't know how to explain it, but while everyone else was talking over each other or telling stories to be the center of attention, he stayed quiet, observing, and when he intervened, he did so simply, directly, without bragging or exaggerating. We chatted for a while, and I discovered we had a lot in common. We both liked long walks, enjoyed dogs, and had a similar vision for what we wanted in life. At that moment, I didn't know it, but that conversation was the beginning of the most important relationship of my life. Victor was 25 when I met him, and from the beginning, his story surprised me. Unlike many guys our age, he had been working since he was 16. He told me he had started as a mechanic's assistant, that he also washed cars on weekends, and that he did all of that to support his family. Over time, thanks to his effort and discipline, he got a position at a car dealership, where he gradually rose through the ranks to become a manager. I listened to him and couldn't help but feel admiration. He wasn't someone who had it easy, but someone who had built his path with sacrifice. What struck me most wasn't just his financial stability, although it was surprising that at his age he already earned very well, but his way of being, kind, attentive, patient. After so many boyfriends who had made me feel inadequate, Victor was an absolute contrast. With him, I felt valued, respected, loved. It was as if for the first time in my life, someone had arrived not to break me further, but to illuminate everything that was dim inside me. Even my parents noticed it. When they met him, my dad told me something I'll never forget. This young man is different, Paulina. You can see it in his eyes. And my mom, who was always very reserved about my previous partners, congratulated me on finding someone so good. They appreciated him very much, and that was important to me because in the past they had always distrusted the guys I dated. With Victor, it was different. It was as if everyone around me could see how special he was. Over time, our relationship became more serious. We were together for almost 2 years, and in all that time, he never gave me a single reason to doubt him. He was thoughtful without being over the top. He accompanied me on my university projects, supported me when I got stressed about exams, and when I had personal problems, he always found a way to make me feel like everything would be okay. He also shared his plans with me. His idea was that as soon as I graduated, we would move in together, and then, in about 6 months, get married. In fact, he had already given me an engagement ring. It was such a special moment that I still remember it with tears in my eyes. I was so sure I wanted to spend my life with him that I had no doubts in accepting. Up to that point, everything seemed perfect. I was aware of how fortunate I was to have someone like him. Many times I told myself that after so much past pain, life was finally giving me a real chance to be happy. But there was one detail that, though small at first, began to grow over time: the opinions of my friends. I have a close group of friends since high school, and although I love them, I must admit that many times their comments affected me more than they should. They knew everything about my relationship with Victor, and at first, they didn't say anything bad. Some even told me that it was clear I was happy and that he obviously treated me well. But as the months passed, small comments began to emerge, questions that seemed innocent, but little by little sowed doubts in me. Things like, "Don't you think you're too young to get engaged? Aren't you afraid that you'll later discover you haven't lived anything? Or is it that men who seem so perfect sometimes hide things?" I tried to ignore it, but I won't lie, it bothered me. The hardest part came as our graduation trip approached. It was a trip organized by the graduating class, something we had been planning for over a year. It would be our last experience together as classmates before each of us went our separate ways. From the beginning, the trip was planned as only for the graduating class, meaning no external partners. Initially, I didn't care because I trusted Victor and he trusted me. He encouraged me to go. He told me to enjoy it, that I deserved it after so much effort with my studies. But that's when my friends started to insist more strongly. They said that the graduation trip was an opportunity to live life, that it was a unique moment for mischief, that it was almost a tradition for no one to take it too seriously. They used phrases like, "What happens on the trip, stays on the trip," or "It's your last single experience, you should take advantage." I laughed nervously and told them no, that I was engaged, that Victor and I had serious plans, but they wouldn't stop. And little by little, even though I didn't want to admit it, the idea began to settle in my head. What if they were right? What if I was missing out on something by getting engaged so quickly? What if I later regretted not having lived enough? It wasn't that I doubted my love for Victor, that was clear to me. I loved him deeply, but my friends' words began to become a kind of constant echo. It was as if every time I thought about the trip, instead of getting excited about the experience itself, I felt torn between what I wanted and what I was supposed to do according to them. And that's when it all began. The day of the trip arrived faster than I expected. I had tried to convince myself that it would be a normal experience, take the plane, spend time with my friends, enjoy the beaches, and return home with nice memories. But deep down I felt a knot in my stomach. It was as if my heart knew something was about to happen, something that would change everything. Victor took me to the airport. I perfectly remember his calm smile as he helped me with my suitcase. He hugged me tight and told me to enjoy myself, not to worry about anything. I tried to smile, but inside I felt guilty for no reason. It was strange, because I hadn't done anything wrong yet, and still, that feeling haunted me. I said goodbye to him with a long kiss, and as I watched him walk away, a part of me wanted to run after him and tell him I didn't want to go, that all I needed was to be by his side, but I didn't. In the waiting area, my friends started with their usual comments. One said mockingly, "Pao is going to enjoy this trip like no one else." And another added with a laugh, "Friend, eat them all up. Don't spare anything. It's your last chance." I blushed and laughed nervously. I told them again and again that I wasn't going to do anything, that I was engaged, that my life was with Victor, but it was as if they didn't hear me. They laughed, looked at each other, and made jokes about it. During the flight, I tried to distract myself by looking out the window, but the conversations didn't stop. Every joke, every insinuation, every laugh made me feel more vulnerable. It was as if they were psychologically preparing me for something I didn't want to accept at that moment. When we arrived at our destination, everything seemed perfect. The weather was warm, the hotel was beautiful, and the excitement of it all was in the air. I let myself go at first. We went to the beach, ate together, took pictures, laughed. But even in the midst of all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a place from which I wouldn't be able to return. That same afternoon, we met a group of foreign guys. They were 3 from Puerto Rico who were also on vacation. We ran into each other at the hotel pool. They were outgoing, friendly, and physically very attractive. I won't lie, they were strikingly handsome, with that confidence that seemed to attract all the girls. At first, the interaction was innocent. They greeted us, made comments about how fun the place was, and asked where we were from. My friends, of course, immediately jumped into the game, shamelessly flirting and asking them questions to prolong the conversation. I kept a bit more to the side, although I participated so as not to seem rude. That night we went to a nightclub and, as expected, the guys were there too. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if they had followed us intentionally, but as soon as they saw us, they approached. My friends were delighted, dancing with them, laughing and drinking. I, on the other hand, stayed calmer. I didn't want to cross any lines, but little by little things became blurred. One of the guys started paying me special attention. He came very close, invited me to dance, gave me compliments that made me feel seen in a different way. I tried to maintain distance, but my friends didn't help. "Pow, don't be a spoilsport. Dance, enjoy," one of them said, literally pushing me towards him. And so, between the music, the lights, and the alcohol, the approaches became inevitable. Nothing else happened that first night, but something in me had already shifted. The following days were similar. We coincided with them at the pool, on the beach, or in the hotel bars. They were always nearby, always finding a way to integrate into our group. And even though I tried to tell myself that I loved Victor and that I shouldn't get carried away, the constant pressure from my friends weakened my defenses. They told me things like, "It's just fun, pow, nothing happens, no one will find out. Don't be the boring one in the group." I insisted that I wouldn't do anything, that I didn't want to jeopardize my relationship. But the more I denied it, the more it seemed they took it as a personal challenge to make me fall. Until the night everything spiraled out of control. We had gone out to a club again. There was a lot of alcohol, loud music, and an atmosphere where everything seemed permitted. I drank more than I should have, not because I wanted to lose control, but because I felt that way I could silence that internal voice telling me to stay away, not to expose myself. The three guys were with us. We all danced together. The laughter grew more intense, and the caresses that until then had been subtle became obvious. A hand on the waist, a closer brush, a look that said it all. At some point in the night, the group dispersed. My friends were busy with other people, and I was left alone with the three guys. I no longer know how to describe exactly what happened next, because I feel like my mind partly blocked it out. But what I do remember is that everything happened so quickly that by the time I wanted to react, it was already too late. That night I ended up sleeping with all three. Not one, not two, but all three. My friends couldn't believe it when they found out. They looked at me with a mixture of surprise, nervous laughter, and even admiration, as if I had done something epic to tell. But I felt none of that. On the contrary, as soon as it was over, I was overwhelmed by a feeling of emptiness, of dirtiness, of deep regret. I locked myself in the bathroom of the room and cried silently. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I couldn't stop thinking about Victor, about his smile when he said goodbye to me, about how he had hugged me that morning at the airport. I thought about the engagement ring on my finger, about the plans we had together, about the absolute trust he had given me unreservedly. And I had destroyed it all in a single night. The next day I felt horrible. I'm not just talking about the physical discomfort from the hangover, but an emotional pain that gnawed at me from within. My friends tried to cheer me up. They told me not to worry, to forget about it, that it had just been an adventure, and I didn't have to tell anyone. But I couldn't see it that way. I knew I had crossed the line in the worst possible way. It hadn't been a small mistake, it hadn't been an isolated oversight. It had been a multiple, intentional, conscious betrayal, even if I had been intoxicated. And the worst part was that there was no way to go back. That day I barely spoke. I walked along the beach with my friends. I pretended to smile for photos, but inside I was crumbling. I felt trapped in a lie that hadn't even started yet, but that sooner or later was going to consume me. The days after that night were a torment for me. I tried to act as if nothing had happened, to enjoy the last hours of the trip, but inside I felt broken. What weighed on me most was the guilt, a guilt that wouldn't go away no matter how much I tried to distract myself. Every time I saw the ring on my hand, I wanted to rip it off. My friends noticed my state and, instead of taking it seriously, they saw it as a source of jokes. One morning, as we were having breakfast, one of them said, "Pow, it really wasn't that big of a deal. It was just an adventure. You don't have to torment yourself." Another added lightly, "The Puerto Ricans left yesterday, so no one will find out. It'll be our secret. Don't worry, friend." I listened to them and wanted to believe them. I wanted to think that everything could be buried there as if it had never happened. But then came the cruel comments disguised as jokes. One of them, laughing, said, "Oh friend, I still can't believe it. How did you do it? Did you use every hole in your body, or what?" They all burst out laughing, except me. I felt my face flush with shame. I wanted to scream at them to stop, that they didn't understand the pain I was feeling, but the words wouldn't come out. I just lowered my head and played with the spoon in my coffee, wishing I could disappear. That same afternoon, as I tried to get some sleep before going out with them again, I received a message from Victor. As soon as I saw his name on the screen, my heart raced. I thought it was an "I miss you" or some sweet photo. I opened the notification with a nervous smile, and in a second my body froze. It was a photo. A photo of me. In it, I appeared dancing with the 3 guys. The image was taken very close, enough so there was no doubt it was me. I felt the blood drain from my face. To this day, I don't know who took that photo or how it got to him. Below the photo was a message from Victor. "You're having a lot of fun, love. They told me you went to a quiet place with them, with all 3. Tell me, what did you talk about? Because I suppose you only talked, right?" I read those words over and over again, unable to believe it. My hands trembled, my phone almost fell. I felt an emptiness in my chest, as if someone had ripped out my heart. I didn't know what to do but call him immediately. When he answered, his voice was cold, so different from the sweetness with which he always spoke to me. I barely said, "Victor, let me explain," and he interrupted me. "There's nothing to explain. I understand everything now. We're over. Don't look for me anymore." And he hung up. I stared at the blank screen, phone in hand, tears streaming down my cheeks. I tried to call him again, text him, beg him, but he didn't answer. That night I cried inconsolably. I locked myself in the hotel room bathroom, curled up on the floor, and cried until I had no strength left. The next day I barely spoke to my friends. I distanced myself from them. I didn't want to hear their jokes or their attempts to reassure me. I felt angry because, in a way, I knew it had been my decision, but it also hurt that they had played such a big role in pushing me into that abyss. The trip ended and we returned home. From the plane, I only thought about finding him, seeing him face to face to explain, even though I didn't even know what words to use. I had the absurd hope that if I looked into his eyes, he would understand my regret. The first thing I did was go to the apartment Victor was supposedly going to rent for us to live together. I knocked, I insisted, until an older man, the landlord, opened the door. He told me that the young man had canceled everything a few days ago. I felt as if the ground opened beneath my feet. I didn't give up. I went straight to the car dealership where he worked. He was there in his office, busy as always, serious, with that straight posture that always characterized him. When he saw me enter, he lowered his gaze and continued with his papers as if I didn't exist. I approached him crying, begging him to listen to me. I asked him to give me a chance to explain, to show him that I loved him, that it had been an unforgivable mistake, but that I could still mend it. He didn't look up once. A short while later, 2 security guards arrived. They gently took my arms and told me I had to leave. I screamed, cried, begged while he remained at his desk ignoring me. It was one of the biggest humiliations of my life. When I returned home, my parents immediately noticed something was wrong. They asked me what had happened, why I was so devastated. I tried to avoid it at first, but I couldn't keep the lie. I broke down and confessed everything. The silence that followed was unbearable. My father looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and horror. Finally, he said in a harsh voice, laden with disappointment, "With all 3? Daughter, that's not normal. You're sick." Those words cut through me like knives. My mother, with tears in her eyes, took my hand and added, "Daughter, we need to get you tested. We need to rule out any infection." At that moment, I felt dirtier than ever. Shame completely covered me. Not only had I lost the man I had loved most in my life, but I had also shattered the image my own parents had of me. I locked myself in my room and cried for hours. I found no comfort in anything. Every memory with Victor was now a torment. His hugs, his plans, his words of love. Everything was gone, and all because of me. I knew there was no going back. I couldn't erase what I did. I couldn't turn back time and stop myself before crossing that line. I had lost everything in 1 week of weakness, pressure, and stupidity. Only a few weeks have passed since everything exploded, and it still seems incredible how quickly I destroyed what I loved most. Victor blocked me everywhere. He hasn't wanted to listen to me even once more. I went his job twice, just to try to explain, even though I knew no explanation would suffice. I ended up banned from the place for disturbing the peace. His silence is more painful than any insult. He didn't yell at me, he didn't scold me, he simply erased me from his life. I haven't seen my friends again, or rather, those women I considered my friends. They moved on with their lives, with their gossip and laughter, as if nothing had happened. I was left with the consequences. Deep down I know I was responsible, not them. No one forced me, no one dragged me. I made the decisions I made. My parents look at me differently. My dad barely talks to me, and when he does, there's a weight in his words, as if he no longer recognizes me as the daughter he raised. My mom insisted that I get tested, that I take care of myself, that I think about my health. But beyond the physical, what hurts is that I disappointed them, that I did something so low that even they look at me with disgust. I regret it, and I know that regret changes nothing. I would give everything to go back in time, to that night when I could have said no, when I could have remembered that I had a good man waiting for me, who loved me unconditionally, but I didn't, and now there's no turning back. Today, the only thing I can do is speak from the open wound I inflicted upon myself. If anyone ever reads this, if anyone ever finds themselves in a similar situation to mine, my advice is simple: value those who truly love you. Don't play with what you're not willing to lose. Don't let yourself be dragged by pressure, by laughter, by the euphoria of a night, because that instant can destroy years of love and trust. I no longer have Victor, I no longer have friends, and I barely have my parents who look at me with disappointment. I am left alone, and that loneliness is my punishment. I hope my mistake serves as a warning. Some things, once broken, can never be repaired. By the way, all tests came back negative. Fortunately, I don't have any illnesses. But do you know what the worst part is? I'm late this month and I just took a test. I'm pregnant.